Hello, Patriots. Welcome to the Patriots Art Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Gagnon, and I'm so excited to introduce you to today's guest, acclaimed photographer Jack Alterman. Jack dropped out of college to join the Coast Guard, but due to an eyesight injury, ended up serving in the Marines as a supply clerk in Okinawa during Vietnam. Now, it was during that time that he discovered his love for photography, volunteering for Stars and Stripes. After his enlistment, Jack enrolled in the Brooks Institute of Photography and eventually earned his stripes in an absolutely storied career as one of the top photographers working today. You are going to love experiencing his incredible images and the stories behind them. So let's give a warm Patriots welcome to today's guest, Jack Alterman. All right, welcome to the show, Jack Alterman. Thank you very much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. Obviously, you're a veteran. And what branch were you in?
I was in the Marine Corps. I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina. Always said, one day I'm going to join the Coast Guard. So I did, and I was in college, and a good friend of mine told me that he was going to do that too. And I said, you know what? I'm not ready for college. I'm practically flunking out. I was making C's. So I went down to this is 1967. I went to the recruiting office and went into the Coast Guard and signed up. I loved it. You know, we said, okay, great. Took all these tests, took a physical. He said, go home. So I dropped out of school and was ready to report in the spring. And I got a call from that same recruiting officer, and he said, I'm sorry, but your physical was turned down because of your eyes. You've got an amblyoblique/lazy eye. And the Coast Guard says you got to have corrected vision. You know, you can have bad eyes, but you got to wear glasses. You got to be 20/20. He said, oh, man. I said, so I guess I'm 4F, you're right? And he says, no, unfortunately, you're 1A because the Army will take you. And I wasn't in school, and almost right away, I get a draft notice. I said, I'm not going to get drafted. And he said, you don't have to. I'm still in the Coast Guard, you know, talking to this guy often. He said, I want you to meet a friend of mine. Come down here to the recruiting office again. So I did. I walked in his office, and there was a Marine recruiting sergeant there. And he said, listen, son, I read your aptitude tests are outstanding, and the Marines will teach you how to use that good eye. And he just talked me into it, you know, and so I did. It was in 2 months, you know, I'm in Parris Island, South Carolina, and a few months later, I'm being shipped overseas, and very, very luckily, because his promise was good. My aptitude was high enough that they put me they assigned me a position as a supply clerk. So I landed on the island of Okinawa instead of Vietnam, and that's where I stayed for 13 months.
Hello everyone, it's Mary White with your quick art tip. In nature, there are all kinds of interesting textures. Things like the smoothness of a rock, the slickness of leaves, or the thin airiness of sky, or the roughness of bark. I'm going to give you a quick tip on how to paint the texture of bark. Okay, I'm standing by this tree right here, and the first thing you want to do is get your base color. So on one side, I'm mixing a sort of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna together. But I'm going to paint what we call dry brush. And what that means, the brush isn't really completely dry, but it's almost dry. And by holding the handle low, you see how I'm skipping across the paper here. And I'm letting it go over the texture of the paper there. And then while that's still wet, I'm painting the shadow side of the tree with a slightly darker color, which means I don't have as much water on the brush. So here's the shadow side of the tree there. And there. Okay, so now I have the base color down, the lighter blue-gray with the warmer brown underneath to show the shadow side. Next, I'm going to take this brush, I'm going to load it up, and I'm going to dry brush it across. This is what we call dry brush, and this gives the real texture of the bark. Okay, so now I've got the basic of the bark in there, and I can actually paint in a few more little details with it using the very tip of the brush. And then there's one more step, and this is the most fun of all. This uses a toothbrush. And now here I have an old toothbrush, and what I'm doing is I'm loading it up on the palette, and then I just take my fingernail and I just splatter it across. And if you don't want to splatter it into, say, the sky area, if you take a paper towel and you put it over that area, that'll protect it as you're splattering that into it. So that is how you can get a great bark texture. And that's your art tip for today. Happy painting.
Believe it or not, this is one of the most important tools that you can have in your toolbox. This is a value scale, most commonly found in 5, 9, or 10 values, ranging from white all the way to black. Within these shades of gray, you will find the values ranging from the highlight, the light side of an object, the midtone, or what we call the local color, and then the 3 types of shadows: the reflected light, the core or form shadow, and the cast shadows. The importance of a value scale cannot be overemphasized. On my easel, I have 2 and sometimes 3 value scales that I surround my canvas with, so that throughout my drawing or my painting, I can check and verify everything. Before making some of your own, I always practice a few value scales on my paper, just drawing it out over and over and over again until I'm really comfortable getting it to a satisfactory value scale. Once I do that, I take a simple painter stick from a hardware store, and I either glue paper to it or I paint it with primer or gesso. Once the paint is dry or the glue is dry, I then go ahead and mark off 9 squares measured out exactly as I can, and then begin drawing a value scale on there. Once everything is shaded and I'm satisfied with what I have, I go ahead and spray it down with some workable fixative to lock everything in, and then I have this incredible tool that I can tape to my easel, or if it's small enough, put it into my art kit or box. This is a fantastic project that I know that you're going to enjoy. It will give you a great tool in your toolkit. And if you make one of these, send us a picture so that we can see your work. You can send it to us on our Facebook page or on our website at patriotartfoundation.com. I want to transition here. I really want people to see, and I want to hear your comments on some of your photography so we can see this. Let's start with that beautiful photo that you mentioned of the lady in her house. Here it is right here. Talk to us about this amazing photo.
Okay, so this was when I told the story earlier about St. Helena's Island, and I was just walking and I was going to be photographing an old church. and I came across this lady, and I had a chance to speak to her. Now, I will tell you that she spoke a dialect called Gullah language, which in the South, especially South Carolina, it's still spoken today, and it's hard to understand. It's English, but it's got a heavily accent to it. And I was able to, because I grew up here, and their lady that resembled this woman, her name was Edna, to me, I felt very comfortable with her. And something, like I said, the vibes were good enough that I said to her, can I do a portrait of you? And I don't even know if I used the word portrait, because I was at that point in my life, I'm not sure if I knew what a portrait was when it comes to photography.
Sure.
But, I wanted to get something close up, and she let me I just kept getting closer and closer until now I was talking to her in almost a whisper. And she looked over, and I was controlling this. I asked her to turn her head a little this way or that way. And the available light was what you see. And I, shot this with, on film, black and white film with a Tri-X, the brand Kodak film. And that was that. I had no idea that I'd gotten the picture. I shot one roll of 36 exposures and then took it to a dark room, and this is one of the pictures.
So this photo is basically your college application photo.
Yes. Yeah,
So
it is.
What year was this photo taken?
That was 1969.
Wow, awesome.
That'll date me right
really
there.
great. And so one of the things I love about this, it shows us a glimpse of your development. This is when you were just a young photographer just starting out. You hadn't even started your career officially yet. This is your college application. This is the beginning, and now we get to look at some of the photography as we go through. So let's look at this next one. This is a photo that you took of our mentor at the Patriot Art Foundation, Mary White, as she's doing a self-portrait. Take a look at this one here. I just, there's Miss Mary with her silly hat. I love it.
Mm-hmm. So this, I've been friends with Mary for a lot of years, and this was taken in 2020 during COVID, and it was lockdown. And so Mary and I stayed in touch, because what she would call me and say, Jack, can you come over and photograph my latest painting? And that really was the basis of our relationship for going back a long way. She'd bring them into my studio, where I had a controlled lighting set up. So which is no more than just getting the light perfectly even on every square inch of the paper, and photographing it for her portfolio. So in this case, so she comes over, and that was the painting she wanted me to do, but I said, I want to do one of you doing it. In fact, she said, oh yeah, I'm not even finished. So she started doing that. I set up a mirror on the far side of it, as you can see in the background. So I was able then to see her face, the back of her head, and then what she was doing. So again, this is the story of Mary painting, doing a self-portrait during COVID. And at this point, I really loved this sort of layered feel that's allowing me to look at her from two directions at once, and as she's even, in this case, painting herself. So this is very unusual. But so that's what it is now.
Yeah, it's an amazing photograph, because we're getting her looking at her artwork. You see how in her painting what she's imaging herself as, and then we can see in the mirror her actual face working on it. The depth of this and the different angles, all in one painting, all in one photo here of her doing a painting. It's really, really, really fascinating the way you've got three images of the same person all at the same time. It's really, really, really cool.
And just to add on to that, so just going back to our conversation about having the right tools and learning the vocabulary, and I like the idea of the vocabulary, because they're not just words. It's something else. It's just how to use everything you have in your power to communicate. And to do this in this picture, I had to, prop myself up, as a tripod almost, and get enough depth of field. And a lot of you know what that means. It just mainly I wanted the top of her head to be in focus because I wanted to be able to read the newspaper on her head that actually says pandemic at some point, and you can see it in the painting and also the reflection in the mirror. So I've got a sharpness in every field. It was important for me to show all of that, the whole flow. So while you're in this moment, and she might be slowing her hand down because I'm probably telling her, okay, right there, stop. I've got to make sure that I'm at that f-stop, like 11. And while I'm shooting at a 15th of a second handhold, it's all that's going on. But you know what? It's second nature. You're holding your breath. All of these things happen because you've been doing it and you've been doing it. And that's where the dues came in, that now I'm a marksman. Okay, I'm an expert doing it.
Right.
And now I can do it all the time.
That's really, really powerful. Okay, let's look at the next one here. This one, these are two landscapes, but they are of the ocean. They're of some water scenes. Tell us about these two photographs.
Okay, so to start with the one on the bottom, okay, with the pilot boat. This is a pilot boat in along the coast of South Carolina or the East Coast, is the ship that goes out to meet the big ships that are going to be escorted into the harbor. I have a small boat that I would keep at a marina downtown in the city, and I was doing a project for myself, and it was on buoys. I just was fascinated by the positioning of the buoys, and I called the project Right Red Returning. And so, you don't know exactly when these boats are coming and going, but you can see them from a distance. So what you've got to do is, or I did here, is I stopped my little boat right there where I was drifting along, but still, I saw him coming, but I set up the shot with the red buoy being on the left-hand side there and the green one further along. And if you look behind the green one, there's a lighthouse that I was also including in some of this project, this portfolio of work. And so that, that's what that one was all about. The one on the top was if I had turned around, and that, this might be the view that guy on the boat is looking at, is a fort that a lot of people think is Fort Sumter, but it's called Castle Pinckney. And they, at the same time, like I said, I'm a commercial kind of photographer, and I know what people are looking for. Certainly they weren't looking for this. This is done for me. But that flag that was flying up there was put up by an organization, a nonprofit, who had asked me, hey, anytime you're out there, take a picture of the flag that might be up. There's like a dozen. They'll fly things like, the Star Spangled Banner, and that happened to be up in July. And then they do all these other more Confederate type things. And so on that morning, and to tell you the truth, it might have been a different morning because I would go out a lot doing these kinds of things. And I wanted to tell a story about this island, that flag, and where it was with those bridges in the background. So there would be no doubt that you're in the Charleston Harbor with those bridges, which are the Ravenel Bridge that was built in 2005. And say I'd done a project on that bridge as it was being built, and I called it Bridge Builders. I think you've got a picture coming up. I'm not sure if you downloaded it, but I'll point it out to you. So everything I did was in sunrise. Sunrise is a time that you're in the most control of your environment because you don't have as many people, of course, out in the harbor. But listen, on a Saturday afternoon, this would be filled with pleasure boats and sailboats.
Right.
So you know that you want these reflections in the water, and you've got to take what nature gives you. You can control it. You know what time the tide's going to be high. You know what time the sun's going to come up. And those are the tools that you have to create this kind of image. But, what do you do next is, we're all, by the time you get out of the military, some folks are in their 20s still. More likely they're in their 30s, or if you're making it a career, you've got a whole nother career ahead of you. If you went in after high school or even after college, 20 years, 30 years, you still got time to do something totally different. But it's not any different than, people who go to college specialize in something. Hopefully if you go to technical colleges, it's even more focused. Put it that way. The military is like a technical college that you learn how to do something that you could have only have learned there. You could have only learned how to fly an F-18 if you were in the military, okay? And all the way down. I mean, you know things that other people don't know. So now, how do you apply that to an art form? And I think you got it. You'll figure it out. That, wait a minute, I know what it's like to see the world from this perspective. How do I then apply that to an art that makes me really different and show people who I am, and also make myself happy?
Yeah, that's really powerful. And that what you've described is exactly what the Patriot Art Foundation's, our motto, is about: telling veteran stories through art. Sometimes words just don't cut it to tell what's inside, what's going on, but images, pictures worth 1,000 words, sometimes more than that. And visuals can tell a story. It's primal. It touches people in a deeply emotional, spiritual level that sometimes words just can't reach us. And there's so many words just flying around the world that we live in, especially now with the 24-hour news cycle. But one image can just change everything very powerfully. And so that's really what we're about, is empowering veterans to be able to tell their stories and share it with the world. And so we thank you for your service, first of all. And then also we thank you for coming on this show and talking about your passion, talking about your arts, talking about your journey. And I know that it inspired me. I got fired up listening to it. And I know that our viewers were absolutely touched by it. And so we want to thank you for coming on the show. How can people get in touch with you? How can people learn more about you so that they can see more of your work and learn more about you?
I have a website. It's just jackalterman.com. And you can email me through that site. I'm easy to get a hold of. And I'm happy to hear from people and answer questions. And I have some books out. You can get them on Amazon. It's the only one out there right now is the My City Charleston book, which is a gorgeous book. These are coffee table, just luscious books. The My City book is more of a book that people who come to Charleston or live here will buy. The one that I have that you'd have to get on my website called My Lazy Eye, and I wish there was a way I would discount these to any veteran. I'd figure out a way to do it. They're for sale at $60, but it's a 5-pound book, and it has pretty much the story we just talked about me going in the military. And the name of the book is My Lazy Eye, and I did the whole thing from most of the design. I used a graphic designer to help me really put it into that format. But I wrote it and laid it out, and it's got pictures from all over the world to sort of, and what I did was I matched them. I had the left side of the page and the right side of the page. There might be a picture of a person in New York City in a little bookstore, like a child, and it's a portraity thing. And then on the right-hand side, there is another picture in another part of the world, maybe here in Charleston, that rhymes in a way. In other words, it has a visual rhyme, so that the same eye had to have taken that picture. And I don't know what made me take them both, but there is a compositional thing and a lighting thing and all of those that come together so that I can, match them, without them having any relationship whatsoever, except for the photographer. So I did this book, about 220 pages long, and it's fun because when you turn the page, it's like, where am I now? There's no continuity except for this lazy eye taking the pictures. So if you're interested in that, you can get it in some bookstores, but on my website there's a way to get it. And if you send me an email and you say, hey, I got this information from this talk, and you'll have to pay $60, but I'll discount it. In other words, you'll get a refund.
Oh, we appreciate that.
25%. How about that? I'll commit to that, and mail it to you for free. So the only reason you would want it is because they're really good photographs that somebody took the time to bind in a book. I mean, go through the process of self-publishing a book, which is a whole nother conversation we'll have sometime. That's one of the most gratifying things you can do with your work at the end of your career, if it ever ends, except for the inevitable. But to catalog your work in some way, and is just really a wonderful thing to do. So that's how they can find out. The website, I'm not that diligent about updating it all the time, but I do. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. And again, guys, if you want to check him out, you can check him out at jackalterman.com. So, Mr. Jack, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Tim.
We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Great being with you.
All right.
Bye.
Welcome, veterans, to Watercolor Boot Camp, where we are going to show you how you can tell your own story through art. I'm Mary White. I spent 7 years traveling the country, painting veterans from all walks of life and from every state for the project We the People, Portraits of Veterans in America. And that's where I learned how painting could be a way for you too, as a veteran, to tell your own story. We're going to show you how you can select your painting materials, draw it on the paper, mix the color, paint washes, and create paintings that you'll be proud enough to show your family.
I was a combat medic.
Army. I hadn't painted in 55 years. Since the 4th grade. I tried watercoloring once, it didn't work out very well. Not as hard as I thought it was.
And so what will your paintings look like? Well, they won't look like mine, and they won't look like anybody else's, because there's no one way to paint. There's not a right way or a wrong way. Your paintings will look just like your own, because maybe you like to paint every little detail, or maybe you like to paint big, loose washes and paintings that are almost abstract. You might like bright, vibrant color, or you may prefer neutral colors.
I'm learning and watching Mary, how she just throws paint on the canvas and all of a sudden it's a pair of boots. Amazing.
It sounds weird, but you lose track of time. And that's when you know you're doing something that's good for you. You'll be painting and all of a sudden you look around and it's like, man, it's been 2 hours. Oh, this is amazing. This is what I've been doing with my life, painting.
We're gonna come alongside you so that you can work at your own pace in your own home. And we're gonna show you how to paint big, loose paintings, still life, landscapes, flowers, animals, portraits, and even illustrated journals that you'll be proud to have as a keepsake.
It saved me. I hit a really deep spot, and it was the art therapy that it pulled me out. I get stressed, that's the first thing I go to. The problem still exists, but it doesn't affect me anymore.
We are so proud at the Patriot Art Foundation to partner with Terracotta to bring you these courses. And so now, let's get started.